Okay, when you think John D. Rockefeller, you probably picture oil, vast wealth, maybe even monopoly, right?
That's the standard image, absolutely.
But imagine this instead. Rockefeller as a teenager. He's not out drilling wells. He's bent over a ledger, tracking every single cent.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What skills were really brewing back then, even before the oil boom?
Exactly. And that's what we're getting into today. This isn't just a standard biography run-through.
No, we're doing a deep dive looking at his entire career, but specifically through the lens of his, let's call them, selling skills.
And we mean that broadly, right? Not just selling like a product.
Definitely not. It's about selling a vision, selling a structure, selling dominance, really, negotiating incredibly effectively.
Right. So our mission here, our goal for you listening, is to pull out those strategies, maybe the less obvious ones, that are still useful today. For entrepreneurs, sure, but really for anyone interested in how empires get built.
We've broken it down into about 7 key stages, from that very first bookkeeping job all the way through to his massive philanthropy later on.
So let's jump in. Section 1, the foundations of discipline and detail. This is his start as a bookkeeper. 16 years old, Hewitt and Tuttle, a produce commission firm in Cleveland.
Feels like a world away from Standard Oil.
Totally. But this is where some really fundamental habits started forming.
Absolutely. And you see signs of these, well, selling skills even then. These sources mention his, quote, delight in all the methods and systems of the office.
Which isn't typical for a 16-year-old, is it? Delight in office systems.
No. But it shows this deep fascination with how things worked, the mechanics of efficiency. He wasn't just doing the job, he was analyzing it.
Almost like he was trying to figure out the code for business success right from the start.
Yeah, and you see it in his cost analysis too,
Yeah.
especially with transport costs. He wasn't just taking the listed rates for granted.
No, he was digging in, talking to barge owners, ship captains, freight agents, realizing those prices weren't set in stone.
He saw they were negotiable, that there were savings to be found if you understood the costs better than maybe they did.
That shows such an early grasp that posted rates aren't always the final word, that there's leverage.
Exactly. Finding leverage points, understanding the cost drivers, and then there's the debt collection. He apparently used a persistent pestering approach.
Sound fun, but effective maybe?
Well, it speaks to his tenacity. He understood that following through, making sure the money came in, was just vital for cash flow. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary.
Okay, so let's crystallize that. What are the key benefits or insights from this very early stage?
Well, 3 things really stand out for me. First, he got this incredibly detailed ground-level understanding of business operations.
The nuts and bolts.
Precisely. Second, he started building real financial acumen, analyzing costs, negotiating hard. And third, that persistence in debt collection. That meant better financial control for the firm.
So for an entrepreneur listening today, what's the lesson from Rockefeller, the teenage bookkeeper?
I'd say really get obsessed with the operational details of your own business. Don't just hand it off. Understand it deeply.
Know your numbers.
Know your numbers, exactly. And actively work on your negotiation skills. Small wins on costs add up hugely over time.
And the persistence.
That too. Don't underestimate just grinding it out, following through, especially on finance and critical tasks. That relentless follow-up matters.
Okay, let's move to section 2. He makes the leap, entering the market, founding Clark, Gardner and Company in 1859, his own produce commission business.
Right, employee to entrepreneur. And straight away, you see him building alliances. He doesn't go it alone. He forms a partnership.
Which is a selling skill in itself, right? Convincing others to join forces to buy into a shared vision.
Absolutely. Bringing people together, and then there's the money. He needed cash for his share of the capital.
The famous loan from his father.
Yep. Borrowed $1,000, a fair chunk of money then from his dad, at 10% interest.
Which means he had to sell the business plan, his own potential, to his father. The investor pitch, essentially.
It really was. He had to make a compelling case.
Yeah.
And then, the context shifted massively. The Civil War starts.
And demand for food, supplies.
Yeah.
It just skyrockets.
Exactly. And their firm capitalized on it. Profits soared, shows responsiveness to the market.
So the advantages here seem pretty clear. Partnership brought capital, shared risk, different expertise.
And securing that loan showed resourcefulness, persuasiveness, then capitalizing on the war demand. Well, that led to rapid growth and profit.
Lessons for founders today from this stage.
I think it's about being strategic with collaboration. Choose partners who really complement what you bring.
Don't just partner with friends.
Right. And be ready to pitch your vision constantly, clearly, persuasively. You'll need funding, maybe from places you don't expect.
Like Dad.
Like Dad. And finally, stay alert to big market shifts. Be agile enough to respond quickly when demand changes.
Okay, Section 3 feels like a major pivot point. Strategic entry into oil refining. He invests in a refinery in 63, then takes full control in 65.
Yeah, and he himself called that buyout moment the day that determined my career. That's huge.
It really is. What's the selling skill here? Recognizing the potential.
That's definitely part of it. Seeing the oil industry, specifically kerosene for lighting, as this massive future growth area, it wasn't obvious to everyone then.
It was a bet, really.
Calculated one. And he invested strategically in refining, not just drilling, a key part of the value chain.
And then the buyout. He had to convince his partners to sell to him, right, and secure the loans to do it.
Exactly. He had to sell his vision for that refinery, his leadership, his plan for growth. He needed control to execute the bigger strategy he was already forming.
So he wasn't just investing, he was positioning for control.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The benefits. He got into a super high growth market early. He secured ownership of what became Cleveland's largest refinery. And like he said, it set his entire career path towards oil.
Entrepreneurial insights from this decisive move.
Try to look ahead. Identify those emerging trends, the industries or technologies that could be huge tomorrow, and figure out how to get in.
Don't just follow the herd.
Right. And understand when partial ownership isn't enough. Sometimes you need control to really drive your vision. Be ready to make bold moves, borrow if needed, to get that control at critical moments.
Be decisive.
Be decisive when it really counts. Those moments can define everything.
Okay, Section 4, the birth of an empire. This is the big one. Founding the Standard Oil Company of Ohio in 1870. Him, his brother William, Henry Flagler, others.
Yeah, this is where the scale just explodes, and the selling here is about structure, about consolidation.
How so?
Well, he had to convince all these different partners with their own interests and existing businesses to merge everything into one single corporate entity.
He was selling the idea of the larger unified company being better for everyone involved.
Exactly, selling the structure itself, bringing his brother, Flagler, Samuel Andrews, all these key players and their capital under one umbrella, centralizing control.
And alongside that, there was a key market strategy, wasn't there? Pricing.
Yes, keeping kerosene prices relatively low, making it affordable for ordinary households to switch from other lighting sources.
So it wasn't just about maximizing profit per barrel immediately.
No, it seems like a deliberate strategy to drive mass adoption. Build the market, secure market share for the long haul. Very strategic.
The benefits seem obvious in hindsight. Centralized management, combined strength, massive market reach.
Absolutely. It created this incredibly powerful, efficient machine.
Lessons for people scaling their businesses today.
Think really hard about your organizational structure. Does it actually support growth and control? Is it designed for where you want to go?
Not just where you are now.
Exactly. And build that core team. Get the right people aligned around the same goal. And finally, think about pricing not just for profit, but for market penetration and adoption. How can pricing help you win?
Okay, Section 5 gets, well, pretty intense. Aggressive consolidation, the so-called Cleveland Massacre in the early 1870s.
Yeah, this is where Standard Oil moves incredibly fast to buy out competitors. In 1872, they acquired something like 22 out of 26 rivals in Cleveland in just a few months.
Wow. And this is where his, quote, competition is a sin comes from, right? Still controversial.
Highly controversial. The selling skill here shifts again. It's about aggressive acquisition, relentless pursuit.
But he also tried to frame it, didn't he?
He did. There's evidence he portrayed Standard Oil's actions as bringing order and stability to a chaotic industry, almost positioning himself as an angel of mercy, saving failing businesses by absorbing them.
A bit of narrative shaping there, perhaps.
You could definitely say that. And of course, underlying it all was immense financial power, using investment pools, his growing wealth as a tool to make these buyouts happen quickly.
The results were pretty stark.
Undeniably, rapid market dominance in refining. Huge efficiency gains by standardizing everything. And, well, the elimination of most direct competitors in that key region.
Now, this raises ethical flags today, obviously. But focusing purely on the strategies and the selling aspect, what can we learn?
Well, it demonstrates the sheer power of consolidation as a rapid growth strategy, though, again, you have to weigh the ethical side heavily.
Absolutely.
It also shows the importance of framing your actions. How you tell the story around even controversial moves matters, and it underscores how financial strength can be wielded as a strategic weapon to reshape a market.
Okay, let's broaden that again. Section 6, building an integrated empire. Standard Oil wasn't just buying competitors anymore.
No, now they're expanding horizontally more products and crucially vertically controlling the supply chain.
This is where things like pipelines come in, right?
Exactly. Rockefeller saw the railroads had too much power over his costs. So the vision was build our own pipelines. That required selling this massive, expensive infrastructure project internally to investors, selling the long-term vision of cost control and reliability.
That's a big internal sell.
Huge. And then horizontally, they didn't just sell kerosene. They developed over 300 different products from petroleum byproducts, wringing every drop of value out.
Maximizing resources.
Totally. And later in this phase, as criticism really mounted antitrust concerns, muckraking journalists, we see a shift. They start engaging in more deliberate public relations.
Moving away from just staying silent.
Yeah, trying to proactively sell a better image of the company and Rockefeller himself. It was a different kind of selling, managing public perception on a massive scale.
So the benefits here were supply chain control, diversified revenue, and at least an attempt at reputation management.
Right. Though the reputation part was always an uphill battle by then.
Lessons from this empire building phase.
Think about your whole value chain. Where can vertical integration give you more control, reduce costs, increase resilience?
Don't just focus on your core product.
Exactly. And look for ways to maximize all your resources, what byproducts or adjacent opportunities exist, and critically, manage your narrative. Especially when you get big or face criticism, you need to engage and tell your story. Don't let others define you entirely.
All right, final section, section 7, legacy beyond business. This is Rockefeller, the philanthropist.
Yeah, after he mostly stepped back from running Standard Oil day to day, his focus shifted dramatically to giving away his fortune. Over $500 million back then, which is staggering.
And it wasn't just random charity, was it?
Not at all. This is where you see him selling the idea of strategic philanthropy. He wasn't just donating. He was investing in specific areas: education, public health, science aiming for lasting, systemic change.
He started giving early too, didn't he? It wasn't just an old age thing.
No, his Baptist faith instilled a sense of stewardship early on, but the scale became immense later, and he focused on building institutions.
Like the University of Chicago, the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research.
The General Education Board, the Rockefeller Foundation. He wanted structures that would continue the work long after he was gone. And they have. You mentioned the foundation's current climate change commitment, $1 billion. That's enduring impact.
So he was selling a vision for societal improvement, essentially.
Exactly. Strategic, large-scale, long-term investment in solutions. The benefits were obviously huge societal advancements, a legacy far beyond oil, and yes, it did help reshape his public image somewhat over the very long term.
What are the final lessons here, looking at his philanthropy?
Maybe think about integrating giving or purpose into your mission early on. How can your success contribute to something bigger?
And be strategic about it.
Yes, don't just write checks. Invest thoughtfully where you can make the most intelligent, lasting difference. And consider building structures, foundations, endowments to ensure that impact continues.
So wrapping this all up, looking back at Rockefeller's whole arc, it's clear his success wasn't just about oil or luck.
Not at all. It was this really complex blend of skills, selling a vision, yes, but also selling structure, selling consolidation, negotiating relentlessly, managing perceptions. It went way beyond just selling a product.
It's a masterclass in business building, even if parts of it are ethically complex.
Definitely debated. But the strategic thinking, the ability to see the big picture and execute on it decade after decade, there are absolutely lessons there for building something significant and lasting today.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? This broader idea of selling skill, selling vision, structure, influencing. How does that apply beyond business?
Right. Who today is demonstrating that kind of mastery in politics or nonprofits or tech? Selling a vision on a massive scale. What are the consequences, good and bad?
It's definitely something to mull over. How is that kind of influence wielded now?
Indeed. And maybe, for you listening, dig a bit deeper into the ongoing work of those Rockefeller institutions. See how that strategic philanthropy is still playing out today. It's a fascinating look at legacy.
Okay, when you think John D. Rockefeller, you probably picture oil, vast wealth, maybe even monopoly, right?
That's the standard image, absolutely.
But imagine this instead. Rockefeller as a teenager. He's not out drilling wells. He's bent over a ledger, tracking every single cent.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What skills were really brewing back then, even before the oil boom?
Exactly. And that's what we're getting into today. This isn't just a standard biography run-through.
No, we're doing a deep dive looking at his entire career, but specifically through the lens of his, let's call them, selling skills.
And we mean that broadly, right? Not just selling like a product.
Definitely not. It's about selling a vision, selling a structure, selling dominance, really, negotiating incredibly effectively.
Right. So our mission here, our goal for you listening, is to pull out those strategies, maybe the less obvious ones, that are still useful today. For entrepreneurs, sure, but really for anyone interested in how empires get built.
We've broken it down into about 7 key stages, from that very first bookkeeping job all the way through to his massive philanthropy later on.
So let's jump in. Section 1, the foundations of discipline and detail. This is his start as a bookkeeper. 16 years old, Hewitt and Tuttle, a produce commission firm in Cleveland.
Feels like a world away from Standard Oil.
Totally.
Mm.
But this is where some really fundamental habits started forming.
Absolutely. And you see signs of these, well, selling skills even then. These sources mention his, quote, delight in all the methods and systems of the office.
Which isn't typical for a 16-year-old, is it? Delight in office systems.
No. But it shows this deep fascination with how things worked, the mechanics of efficiency. He wasn't just doing the job, he was analyzing it.
Almost like he was trying to figure out the code for business success right from the start.
Yeah, and you see it in his cost analysis too,
Yeah.
especially with transport costs. He wasn't just taking the listed rates for granted.
No, he was digging